Welcome to Royle Subjects, your go-to podcast for anyone trying to navigate the ever-changing world of real estate.
Come with us as we explore topics that are always relevant, never boring, and designed with you in mind.
You guys ever seen the baseball movie Field of Dreams?
Heard of it, haven't seen it.
Okay, put it on your list.
There's a long list, but I'll add it for sure.
There you go. Well, there's like the kind of classic line from the movie of, if you build it, they will come.
Oh, I've heard that.
Yeah, okay. Popular line, lesser popular film apparently. But it's definitely the line that comes to mind when I think about the need for development here within Canada as a whole, but specifically within our area.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
Ontario as a whole, we are so short on housing, and I know that we're going through, this cycle of a buying market where you have options, but you don't really, because there's so many people who need to buy and so many people who need homes in the area for sure.
We almost reverse engineered the quote. We brought them, and now we're trying to build.
Yes,
Yeah. Well,
exactly.
and
it's a
taking
slow process.
Taking a building hiatus during the pandemic, which was fair. You had to make the decision.
Like external factors affected that,
Yeah. Some very significant external factors that actually probably had a larger impact than anybody probably saw coming. But to not build for that long of a period of time, we are now seeing the ripple effects a couple of years later, and we're feeling the pinch. Because there's so many people to buy that we're running out of space. And that's when you get into more competitive markets.
Yeah,
so people are starting to build now, which is good. But what are they building?
Yeah.
Where is this all going? Do we need more single-family homes? Do we need more big apartment complexes? Do we need, because that would house more people, what do we do, and what do we do here locally?
Yeah, well, and that obviously gets us into the conversation of when you identify a piece of land for building, what is its highest and best use, and then what kind of plan do you create from that? For those of you who aren't familiar, so highest and best use, let's break it down a bit. So we'll kind of talk about each of the 4 points and then give an example of each.
Perfect.
So highest and best use, number one thing that you want to identify is what is legally permissible for that piece of land.
Okay.
What are you allowed to do? So who are we talking to find out what is legally permissible?
Well, that's got to be pretty easy. You're talking to the city or looking at the GIS mapping to find out, is it industrial? I want to build an industrial plant. Is it zoned industrial? Or I want to build a triplex. Is it zoned R3, R4 zoning? And if you can get minor variances to, based on lot size and such, that's another conversation. But are you in the ballpark to get started?
Yeah, and if you're not, are you willing to go through the steps to get a minor variance and have a zoning changed?
Yeah.
And we're seeing the government step in with that and, make things easier in terms of single family to multifamily. And so
huge.
That's been a part of the development process
It's a
as well.
huge part of it, and I won't get too much into it. Bill 23, so the Build Homes Faster Act has helped a lot. It's basically turned every residential city lot into R3 zoning, so you can build a triplex on it. There's some contingencies working through that part. There's some areas that make it difficult, but still, no matter what, you can have a duplex or potentially a triplex anywhere in the city, which is great.
Yeah, that's the city trying to step in and make that first step of highest and best use easier.
Yeah.
We're going to make it legally doable.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and then that brings us to our second point. Is it physically possible? Because that's all well and good. You've got the okay from the city, but do you actually have the square footage? Does it make sense to take a building from the 1800s and convert it into something, you know what I mean?
Or you got vacant land and maybe it's marshy.
Right.
A lot more difficult to build on marshy land than it is stable ground.
I went out to showing my clients interested in building their single-family house. Went out to basically an airport roadway. Yes, it had the acreage, so we filtered by acreage, and it had 1.3 acres, but it was down a landing strip. So how do you build a house on that? Do you want it sideways? How are you going to get a driveway to work?
Shotgun house.
Technically was the right zoning, but anyways, not what my client had pictured. We moved on. But that's right. Is it physically possible?
Yeah. And then, of course, is it financially feasible? That's obviously, the big ticket one. So, we can do it. Yes, it'll work. Do we want to put up that cash?
Does it make sense to do it?
Yeah.
Is the third part.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and then, truthfully, the fourth one, does it actually make sense, which is it maximally productive? Is it going to give you that return on your investment that's going to make it worthwhile for you?
Well, that's is less more is more. So you get into a point where, okay, my lot is zoned, R6. I want to put a 12-plex on there. But can I make the same amount of money or have the same amount of gain personally in triplex or fourplex, right?
With less money up front. The interesting part about highest and best use is there's usually multiple answers to what is legally doable, what is physically doable, and what financially makes sense. The fourth part is figuring out which of the options that were doable works best for you and your situation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because some people want the return right now. Some people want the return down the road, right? For Jeremy, we just talked recently about how when he purchased a home, he decided to rent it as a single family home because right off the hop, that was the best use of the property that he had acquired. Once they moved out, then he converted it to a duplex, and now he's able to make money from 2 units as opposed to 1. So it's all a matter of what is best for you in that situation. And I think sometimes that's where, you can get your wires crossed because we see how other people are doing their projects, right? We talked about social media, talked about the internet. It's very easy to see what other people are doing, but not necessarily understanding the implications of why and what is ultimately going to be best for you and your financial situation and the way that you want to carry out your investments.
Well, and exploring your options too, right? You might think that option A is the only option. Well, it's a huge lot. Maybe it makes more sense to sever a portion.
Yeah.
And sell that, and then you have more capital up front to do what you want to do. Like I said, there's lots of options, and sometimes you just don't know which ones are available to you.
Yeah.
So you were talking to me last week about someone that you know in your neighborhood was asking about a development that might be coming, and how is the development going to affect the existing homes in the neighborhood and communities?
Yeah, because I think what's tough is that you don't necessarily know the full extent of the impact, right? Just as much as we didn't know the full extent of the impact of not building. Now, if people are going to build, how is it going to change the traffic patterns? How is it going to change the environment that we're living in, and what does that look like? And there's a lot of unknown variables, and it's obviously, as humans, we are not necessarily apt to change, and so you just sort of have to grin and bear it sometimes and just ride the wave and see how it goes.
No, that's I get that quite often, that question asked, because people are putting in larger apartment complexes. Here in Belleville, we really haven't seen many. The amount of 24plexes is slim to none to begin with. Adding to that is how many new ones are going on the market. Now it's starting to get more. But how does it affect you? It's a massive question. It depends on where your home is, what the value is currently, and what's being built. So you brought up a good point about maybe even apartment complex versus a luxury condo complex. Yeah. Ideally, the same kind of structure. One has 24 apartments and one has 18 condos in it. Although it takes up the same amount of space, is the same amount of laneway, same amount of parking, same amount of everything, the demographic moving into there is quite different. And if the house that you're in question is, you've got a nice 18-row townhouse type building, probably won't affect it at all. But if you have a bunch of $1 million single-family homes there, then the apartment building may affect it, absolutely. Or an industrial plant may affect it. But the luxury condo complex, probably not. I was mentioning before that I get this question all of the time when someone wants to put a pool in, for example. I want to put a pool in my backyard. Will it affect, will I make more money on my house sale? The question is what does your neighbor have? If the neighbor does not have a pool, then you putting a pool in, and by the neighbor I'm meaning the whole neighborhood, it's odd. There's obviously no demand for it because no one else has one. So you're probably not going to get paid on that pool. If you're the only one without a pool, you need one to sell your house, and you will make the return. Yeah. So you think about a place like Florida where they have lots of sun and the pools are easy to maintain. You need to have one there because everyone else does, and you're going to make that money back.
It's interesting. If you look at a neighborhood from like the Google Earth view, you'll often see a lot of pools in the same area. And it's because, typically that's a family-oriented neighborhood. People that live there have children. Pools are usually associated with children, not always, but usually. Yeah. And so it makes just sense that, okay, my neighbors all have pools, I have kids, they have kids, I'm going to be looking in that neighborhood. Whereas if you look in maybe a smaller neighborhood with smaller backyards, there's not going to be very many pools, especially if you're living, close to like downtown or something that is not as family oriented.
Absolutely.
And it's just those connecting factors.
And that process you were talking about, that for everyone is called gentrification of an area. So in the west side of downtown here, for example, is we've had that process start through COVID where someone's picked up, a more affordable house, put some money and time into it, made it nicer. And it does increase the value, but not that much because now you have the nicest place in kind of a crappier neighborhood.
Yeah.
But if the neighbor increases, does the same thing, now your value of your home goes up and you haven't touched it.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to see that process coming to this area. And it's great, and that does have a lot of impact on the highest and best use of what you're doing in that neighborhood.
We're seeing a lot of gentrification in Belleville. Like,
Absolutely.
particularly, I'm noticing it, the Coleman strip there.
Yep.
Like, we just got a really nice new restaurant, the local social house. There's more businesses going in there. We're seeing duplexes and single-family homes being renovated. And then there's the luxury condo buildings going in at the end of the road.
Absolutely. The Arabella's right over there that just got put in. Really nice retirement residence.
It all comes back to being housing providers, right? Like it's really great that there's a focus on safe, clean, affordable housing, because at different price points, different locations, that's really what we want to see.
Absolutely.
But,
that's definitely the benefit of development.
well, we've got some things developing over at the Royle Group, and Ben will be sharing about that in the days to come.
I'm so
stay
excited
tuned.
to talk to you about
Tune
it.
in next week.
Cool.
I'm Danielle.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Ben.
And we can't wait to talk to you next week. If you have any questions regarding real estate, please feel free to reach out at our website, theroyalgroup.ca, or the Royle Group on any social media platforms.
See you around.